All right, everybody, welcome to this week's episode, Nitty Gritty. We have a very special guest with us, Mr. Jason Chaffetz. Thank you so much for coming in.
Well, thank you. Special guest? You say that every week, don't
Actually, I don't think we do. Do we?
I mean, sometimes it's...
I'm like the special needs guest? Is that the idea?
Not at all. I have to give him credit. He hung out with me for a while just to kind of get things going.
And because I was late. Yeah.
We're getting better at the calendar, though. We're getting better.
I
at
got
it.
like an official calendar invite. I was highly impressed. Most podcasts don't do that. You guys are coming up in the world.
Yeah, no, we're like really...
After
Doesn't work with the host,
118 episodes, right? You figured that out?
Yeah.
We found a software to do it for us, so we don't have to.
Yeah, called Google.
Yeah, exactly.
This new thing that you guys are getting into. Yeah, it's going to work.
Some
that
people
Google
call
thing.
us techies, so that's okay.
But that hasn't really entered my mind since I've been here.
Interesting.
But we got to shout out Clint for getting this set up, Clint Curtis. So neighbors with Clint. You've known Clint for a long time.
Yeah, you can't really pick your neighbors. They just show up and then you don't want to move. And Clint is a good guy. His wife's even better, and I love his kids. His kids are just like the cutest kids in the world. So we put up with Clint, but it's really his kids and his wife.
Have you bought any of Hudson's creations that he started making during COVID?
Yes, and Hudson is like the most proper kid. He's like so nice and he's funny.
Yep.
And now he's getting old enough that he likes to like poke fun at you a little bit.
Yep.
And I love it. He's got a little sarcasm going in that.
Yeah, I love
He's
Hudson.
blossoming that way.
I call him Steve.
You
So
do.
he made up a nickname one day. He called himself Steve. And so for the last couple of years, I just call him Steve. Because it was
I'll
like
do it.
a
I'll see if he
self-acclaimed
turns around.
nickname.
I'll see him and say, "Hey, Steve."
Yeah.
And see if he turns around.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, oh man, there's all sorts of fun stuff that I want to chat about. But I'd like to learn more about just kind of where you grew up, just kind of you, family, like just kind of where you came from before we kind of jump into what you've been going and what you've been doing.
Yeah, I was born in Northern California, up in Los Gatos,
Okay.
the Cats,
Okay.
up in the Bay Area. I only lived there till I was about 7. And we lived in a little place called Saratoga. And boy, you kind of wish Dad and Mom had kept the real estate there because it's like ridiculous how expensive it is there now.
Yeah.
When I grew up, it was like cow fields and, wide open spaces. Now it's like you better have, $1 billion in order to live there. And my parents had this out in Santa Cruz, which is a beach. I've got all these pictures playing on the beach and like, oh yeah, that was our beach house. I'm like, couldn't you have kept that? I mean, did you kept
the
this
Santa Cruz beach house?
Yeah, can you imagine?
Well, it wasn't so ritzy back then, but it was a lot of fun. But I only lived there until I was 7. Then my dad, he was very entrepreneurial, and he became the managing general partner of the Los Angeles Aztecs, which is the old North American soccer league.
Oh, wow.
And so we moved to Southern California, and that was a good experience. I lived there for 4 years or so,
Okay.
and played a lot of soccer, and then they sold the soccer team, and so then we ended up moving to Scottsdale, Arizona, and lived there until I was a junior in high school. My parents went through a divorce,
Okay.
and ended up going with my dad up into Colorado. So my senior year, I was up in Winter Park, Colorado. I graduated from Granby. Up in Granby, I was a Middle Park Panther, 49 people in our graduating class, 26 guys, 23 girls, and the odds were against me. It didn't work out well there.
The odds were...
But then I kicked a lot of soccer balls and I kicked some footballs and ended up getting a scholarship to BYU. I was on the BYU football team back in the day. So,
What made you want to come to BYU?
They gave me free stuff.
Okay.
I was actually going to go to Arizona State. I kicked a lot of soccer balls, so then I thought, I'll kick some footballs. It's kind of one of those things early in my life that changed my life, where the vice principal of our high school came and said, "Hey, you guys on the soccer team, we need somebody to kick footballs on the football team." Well, our football team sucked. They were terrible. We were like 0-10 that year. Somehow, some way, me as a junior in high school said, "Yeah, I'll try out." and I tried out, and I was the only one to try out. So guess what? I made it.
You got it.
I got it, and I remember
The odds were in your favor.
I remember going home and telling my parents that I was now on the football team, and they looked at me like, "Can we talk about this?" Because I was not a big kid. I was tall, but I was super skinny, and the football team wasn't making a whole lot of sense to them, and had to learn how to put on the pads. But in between my junior and senior year, my dad bumped into a guy named Fred Steinfort, who played for the Denver Broncos, and they had just cut him. He had played like 12 years in the NFL, and he had a Super Bowl ring. He was good, and I think he really missed the game, and he agreed with my dad that he'd come out and look at me, and I was showing some promise, and he kind of put me on one of those Mr. Miyagi, do this. If you do everything I tell you, then you'll be a good kicker, and it worked. And so for those,
was he a kicker?
He played for the Broncos, played for the Raiders.
Okay.
And he turned me into a really good kicker. Where I was an all right high school kicker, he turned me into like a college level kicker.
So what does that mean? What changes? What makes somebody a really good kicker outside? Is it just accuracy? This is super ignorant on my end. I watch football all the time. I played it, but I don't know what would make.
Yeah, it's so funny to me
different.
because I always listen to these commentators talking about the kicking game, and I just giggle because they have no idea what they're talking about.
My only experience is from Ace Ventura and Laces Out.
So you actually practice with the laces in, because sometimes the laces face you and you don't want to be like, hey, will you please turn that ball a little bit? Basketballs don't have laces, right? But footballs do. And so you just got to learn to kick it. And it's always funny. It's not right hash, left hash. He's on the left hash. It's going to be a hard kick. And like, shut up. All you're doing is kicking from point A to point B. And the difference between, I think, high school, college, and pros in large part is trajectory. So you figure 7 yards away from somebody. Well, when you start playing at the college level, you got a guy who's 6'5" and can dunk a basketball. Yep. So the guy's jumping 10 plus feet. And you figure by the time the surge comes, that's 5 yards. So at 5 yards, you got to have that ball going higher than 10 feet. And so I see these guys in practice, or somebody in practice, I kicked a 70-yard field goal. Like, oh, shut up. You can't do that in a game. First of all, the pressure. The second of all, you can't get that trajectory and make it that far. Yeah, you're going to hit somebody in the butt or in the back. So, but there's certain muscles, and I did a ton of sit-ups. Now, I haven't done a ton of sit-ups in years, but I back in that, a lot of sprinting. It's just that, for those of you that play golf, it's sort of like you learn to hit your 9-iron or your wedge in such a way that you can get exceptional height.
Yeah.
And you just got to kick it straight. It's not, I don't know. You get into a groove once you kind of get past the crowd and the anxiety of it all. And you sit on the sideline for an hour and a half, and then you got to run on the field and one swing of your leg, and you better make that 43-yard field goal. So.
Yep. So then you got recruited down to go to BYU.
Well, originally I was going to go to Arizona State, and now I can say that they gave me an illegal tryout. I didn't know that. I didn't know that as a college prospect that they couldn't work you out. And I had told them that I was coming back to Arizona because they were recruiting me pretty heavily. And I said, look, I'm going to be in visiting my mom in Arizona over the Christmas holiday. And they said, if you just show up at this park on this day, there just might be a coach there. And sure enough, I showed up at this park and brought some footballs and started kicking. And some guy got out of his car after he kind of looked around and made sure nobody was around. And they worked me out for a good hour and a half.
Wow.
And there were no field goal posts. We put a garbage can out, and he would have
me kick into it.
Yeah, and when you're that good, when you can kick like that, you can actually hit it and get really darn close.
Wow.
So they put a garbage can out 60 yards, 65 yards, and you say, all right, kick it in here, or kick it over here, and then kick a short one, kick a high one, kick a long one, kick a, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then just talking to me. Anyway, they offered me a scholarship, but then right before the signing date, Darryl Rogers, who was the head coach, he called one night and he said, Jason? And I said, yeah. He said, what's up, coach? And he said, remember that scholarship I was going to offer you? I am so sorry, but that's just not going to happen because tomorrow the Detroit Lions are going to name me the head coach.
Oh.
And I'm leaving Arizona State, and the athletic director is not going to honor this scholarship. But I will do everything I can to get you placed. And true to his word, he followed up. Think about how busy he is. He's becoming the head coach of the NFL team, right? He called Lavelle Edwards, and pretty much sight unseen, BYU gave me a scholarship. They sent me out. I took a flight. I went into Lavelle Edwards' office, the head coach, and he has this intimidating button under his door, and it just closes automatically. And you sit in this intimidating helmet. Have you ever seen those helmet chairs? Like it's like a huge oversized helmet.
Almost like one of the hands, but it's
it's like but it was a chair.
Yeah.
And you sit in it, and it's terribly awkward. And I think that was all by design. You're not supposed to be comfortable. And you sit in this chair, and I was all prepared to talk about football, but being BYU, Lavelle gave me basically an ecclesiastical interview. He wanted to know about my family and drugs and lifestyle. And, he asked me some really personal questions.
Yeah.
And they offered
Really?
oh yeah.
That's interesting.
Well, and you weren't a member of the church.
No, I'd never been to Utah. And,
Yeah.
I think I took a train ride through Utah.
Okay.
I think we went from Vegas. We were going over to Colorado, but I didn't know anything about Utah.
So what was Lavelle like?
He was very, grandfather-like. He had those big jowls, and he was very nice. He didn't ask me a single question about football. It was all about my family and my life and school and what did I want to do, and and asked point blank, do you drink alcohol? Have you done drugs? Are you, can you pass a drug test? He was very, he got very, and after whatever it was, 20, 25 minutes, he said, all right, go have fun. And then they offered me a scholarship, and it changed my life because it brought me I rolled in here with a Honda CRX and everything I owned and a couple $100 in my wallet. And, I didn't know a single person in this state, not a one, and changed my life.
Wow, that's awesome. What was your experience? I mean, what was it like at BYU? Like coming in that didn't know about it, not a member of the church. I mean,
on the church side of it, most people assumed I was a member of the church, and quite frankly, my lifestyle was conducive to being here. It wasn't like a big change in my lifestyle. So, and I enjoyed school, and I thrived on the football team. So, when you're on a football team, you kind of have this instant mix of friends and
for sure,
and BYU had just won the national championship. So there's all kinds of attention on it. So you kind of become an instant, kind of minor celebrity status. And so you don't have problem kind of meeting people and opening doors and having the welcome carpet rolled out for you.
Yeah. Cam, you had a funny story.
Yeah, so I did want to. I don't know. Do many people talk to you about the helmet thing still?
Yeah, it
The
worked.
Chaffetz rule?
No,
I want to know if it's a rule. I want to know if it was you that made that rule.
it might have been.
Yeah.
The timing was such that it kind of looks like that, but I don't know. I get a lot of beef for this, and
I think it's awesome.
look. I had this helmet. It did not fit my face. And as soon as I made, a field goal or something, I take it off. And just because I didn't take it off if I missed, that shouldn't tell you. You shouldn't read anything into that.
See, I don't know. I think it's hilarious, but I think it'd be kind of cool to have that rule named after you, right?
So
You might have saved some kids. Who knows?
So what is it?
Sorry. I should explain that. So after you kicked a successful field goal, he would take his helmet off and run to the sidelines. And so now it's a rule that you can't take your helmet off before you hit the sidelines.
If you do, you got to sit out. Like you can't play the next play.
That's if it
you
falls
get a penalty.
off. But
Yeah,
you get a. I think it's an unsportsmanlike if you take it off before you get off the sideline.
that rule just happened to change.
Well, and who cares? It's not like the play's dead, right? I mean, anyway.
I got
just
some
thought that was
grief
funny.
that maybe I was, smiling for the camera or something like that.
And who
But
cares if you
I
were?
smile all the time
Right,
anyway.
right.
It's like that. I'm not totally buying this one.
Well, it's funny because I kind of feel, so I feed the New Orleans Saints once a month. I go out there and cook for them, and I do a ton with BYU football, but it's one thing that I hate about football is it is so hard to remember who's who because they're always wearing a stupid helmet.
Yeah.
So even if it was for that, I think that's okay. I mean, especially now with the NIL, like name, image, likeness, it's like, you take it off a little early, let people know who you are. There's nothing wrong with that. So anyway.
Well, as long as you make the kick,
Well,
it's funny. It's like,
right. And was that what distinguished it, or was it like a superstition thing?
that might have been the case. Yeah. It's funny because my friends kind of, especially, I speak a lot with Trey Gowdy. Trey Gowdy's congressman out of South Carolina, former congressman, and he heard me speak one time, and he said, "What was that?" And I told him that I said, I really had a great time at BYU, and the reason I could run for Congress is we never lost a game by the margin of my missed kicks. And he's like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Look, you can't miss a field goal and then lose the game and then expect to run for Congress. They're going to run you out of town." And if we had lost a game because of my missed kicks, I'd be like living in Arizona or something. And anyway, he's always giving me grief about that. And so, I watch these football games and I see these kickers. Like I remember watching a U of U game, and while everybody else saw the U of U kicker miss one, I was looking at him thinking, you know what? There's a guy who will never run for Congress. Just take him off the table. It's impossible. He's not going to win. He can't run.
I wonder how many votes you would actually lose. Because there are
you'd
some
be surprised.
I would.
There are hardcore people, and they all remember. And so I'm very fortunate that way. That we had, look, when I left BYU, I had 5 school records.
Right.
But let's also remember that Ty Detmer was the quarterback. So that's a much more of a testament to the quarterback than it is to Jason Chaffetz, because they were all extra point records.
Right.
I still have 2 of them. 3 of them are gone now. But that's because we were just lighting it up and putting the ball in the end zone.
So many points.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. What are the two
I have a New Orleans Saints story. Can I
do
tell you
you?
that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I was engaged in politics, right? I was a member of Congress for 8.5 years. And during that, you have to raise a bunch of money. Right. So one of the things I did in my congressional district, which included Deer Valley, is I'd have an annual ski fundraiser. People would come from around the country. They'd go skiing. They'd go to my fundraiser. So about 4:00 in the afternoon, I had this, I would, rented out this little room down in the kind of the lobby area of the Montage Hotel.
Right.
And we put out some food. There's slices of pizza and fruit and, all kinds of just cheese and whatever you would get.
It's like little snacks.
So that we had this little reception so people could go skiing, then they can come back in. So I wandered down about, 3:45, right? It starts at 4:00. And just before it starts, all of a sudden these little kids come running over and they just start grabbing this pizza and they start eating. They start eating this stuff, and I'm like, whoa. And sure enough, here comes Dad. Like, I am so sorry. Like, I'm like, it's okay. We got plenty of food. And it was Drew Brees.
Yep.
Drew Brees was there, and he's like, I am so sorry. And I said, no, look, I got kids. I totally get it. We got plenty of food. And he's like, are you sure? I was like, yeah, go ahead. And then I think some other relatives came over and they started, he said, well, can I pay you for this? I'm like, no, just you're fine. And he said, I told him what we were doing. And then he said, well, would it be helpful if I stayed for a little while? And
no way.
And I'm like, yeah,
it would.
That would be helpful. So he stayed, he greeted the people, he took pictures,
So he just happened to be there with his family.
Well, he was skiing, he was playing.
He goes there every year. That's his
really?
spot. Yeah, when he said Montage, I was like, I guarantee it's Drew Brees.
Yeah, no, it's true. And
his boys are crazy. Like, they would totally run in and just start down the food.
Yeah, there was nothing Dad was going to do about it. I don't care if you're Drew Brees or whatever. There's no way Dad was stopping him.
Right.
So Dad was either going to have to pay for it or but I was like, no, you're fine. He did. He wanted to get out his wallet and give me it. But I'm like, no, And so he kind of felt guilty. He's like, I'll take pictures. I'll stay. I'm like, wow. Okay. Yeah, that'll work.
Pretty cool.
That'll work.
That is so
I'm kind of a Drew Brees fan.
Oh,
super nice guy.
That's the crazy thing is, I always hear the term like you don't want to meet your heroes sometimes, but opposite with that. He is the nicest man ever.
Yeah.
The fact that he offers like, would it help if I stayed? Like that's crazy.
He knew he would.
Yeah, of course. Of course. But what a nice guy.
Yeah.
Dang it, I wish I knew that story before he retired, because now I don't really ever get to talk to him, but that's pretty cool.
Probably still goes to Montage every year.
No, he does.
Yeah.
He was just in Deer Valley after last season. They come up every winter.
Yeah. No.
So I can't get him to come down here, but he's like, one of these days you can just bring food up. I'm like, whatever. We'll see.
So you kept talking about like BYU changing your life. Like, what about going there changed your life?
Well, look, I joined the church.
Okay.
I got an education. I got a good job.
Did you ever try to go to the NFL?
So I had kicked with enough guys that were NFL players that I knew I was a pretty good college kicker, but that I was not the pro level kicker. And the New York Jets were the one team that talked to me, and they said, hey, listen, we've got a starter. He's really good. He's going to be our starter. But if you want to come in, we need to keep him honest. And quite frankly, he can't kick every day. So, if you wanted to come, I think you make like $600 over a couple months period of time. And he said, we would probably sign you to be, just keep the other guy honest and do kickoff return, stuff like that. And we just had a preliminary, it wasn't an offer, but it was a preliminary discussion about it. And I had a good job. I met the girl who ended up being my wife. And I just like...
Just ready to get on?
Well, I just knew that I wasn't going to make it.
Yeah.
And, looking back, I think it probably would have been fun to strap on the green and put on that Jets helmet and, spend a few weeks at camp. But it just, the timing was bad. And I was just being brutally honest with myself that those guys at that level can kick that much higher, that much further. It's just, no matter how hard I tried, I just could not do it. And I was good at it. But I couldn't kick at their level.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then where did you go from college then? Like what?
So I started working at New Skin Enterprise. I did that for 10 and a half years. And the last job I had was general manager for Australia and New Zealand, which was kind of fun. So we went and lived down there and then did some entrepreneurial stuff. And my mom had passed away from cancer in 1995 after a 10-year battle with breast cancer. And that's hard. To say it's hard is just an understatement. But that was the same year that the Huntsman family started the Huntsman Cancer Institute.
Okay. And
so I was very touched by that. And when fast forward to 2003, when John Huntsman Jr. was going to run for governor, through a mutual friend, I said, hey, can I come up and meet you? And I was thinking with my wife and I, nothing else, we'd just say thank you for literally pouring hundreds of millions of dollars in to fight cancer. And sure enough, we got a 10-minute meeting, turned into 30 minutes. Next thing I know, I got an offer to be the communications person for John Huntsman for governor, which was a huge pay cut based on what I was used to making.
Yeah.
And but we did it. We thought about it, prayed about it, did it. And then a few weeks later, John Huntsman said, hey, congratulations. You're going to be the new campaign manager. And I said, whoa, time out, John. Listen, I have never done this before. Like I've never run a campaign. And he said, don't worry about it. I've never run for governor before. We'll figure it out.
Oh my gosh.
And then he won. He became the 16th governor. And we had a similar conversation. And he invited me to stay on as his chief of staff. And same conversation. John, look, I've never done this before. I think, it's 22,000 employees and $14 billion budget. I mean, something like that. And he said, don't worry about it. I've never been governor before. We'll figure it out. And like, he really did believe on sort of that book, Good to Great.
Yep.
Get the right people on the bus.
Absolutely.
And we got along and it was working for us. And so I was with him for 2 years and 2 days before I departed and then decided to run for Congress myself. And so,
was there anything inside of you growing up that were you either interested in government and politics always? Like, was there something that was always there? Like,
Well,
where
the
did
the
that come
little
from?
the kind of footnote asterisk that's kind of funny about this is I need a flip chart, but my dad's follow me here. My dad's first wife was named Catherine. Okay, and they got married, had a son, but the best thing that ever happened to me is they got divorced.
Right.
Because my dad married my mom and had me.
Okay.
But Catherine, also known as Kitty, went over and married a guy named Michael Dukakis, who was the 1988 presidential Democratic nominee.
Yeah.
But he was also the governor of Massachusetts. And so I kind of saw that from afar and was very intrigued by that.
Okay.
Kind of thought, oh, maybe I'm a Democrat. And then then I learned to read and write. And then I figured out that I like politics, but I'm not that stupid. So I figured out that I was a very conservative person, and I just, you get married, get a job, have kids. I just was a very conservative person. And so, but you know what? He, to his credit, Governor Dukakis, Michael Dukakis, was very encouraging of participating. I think he truly does believe, as I do, we need good people on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah.
And, you need to have a dialogue. You need to be able to have a discussion. You need to be able to, and people look at things differently. That's why we have a system that's set up the way it is. It'd be a lot easier to just have a dictator, but nobody wants to live like that. So, so that had that little bug there. But, I was 16 years in the local business community before I really touched or even did anything like that.
Yeah.
So
What made you want to stay in it as opposed to going back to?
well, I quit, right? So
Yeah. Well, yeah, but like, what made you stay in it for as long as you did?
I mean, I was passionate about the work. I loved the job. I loved being in the fight. I really dug that. But I happen to love my family and my kids even more. And I was really missing that. When I was in Congress, and then certainly when I became the chairman of the Oversight Committee, it's the second largest committee in all of the House of Representatives, and it's very combative, which I did not mind at all. I just thought it was part of the process in good government, and that you're supposed to challenge, speak truth to authority, and anyway, so. But my life was out of balance. I was home 3, 4, sometimes 5 days a month.
Oh, wow.
I would come home sometimes for 12 hours. And, that kind of stuff just, that gets to you. And again, I missed a lot of my kids growing up, particularly our youngest daughter. And so in my last term, I was elected to my 5th term in Congress. I left months into it because I thought I can sit here for another 18 months, but then I will miss my daughter's kind of junior, senior year in high school. And I've already missed everything else. She was basically, I have to look, 1st or 2nd grade when I started doing this.
Yeah.
So, it's funny because we elect people and we say, oh, we want them to be family oriented, family first and all that. And then when somebody actually does it, then they want to say, oh, you quitter. And like, oh, what? Didn't you say that you were family first? And so I'm not the first person to leave a job, And so, had to put my life back in balance and back in order. It was nothing that happened other than I just missed and loved my family. And so I don't know, maybe I'll go do it again. Life's different now. My wife and I are empty nesters now. But at the time, I know I made the right decision for me and my family. And, but I loved the work. I really did love it, but I loved my family more.
What surprised you most when you got like in government, and especially like in the Congress, and you were doing all of that stuff?
There are some surprises. You can, I think, get a lot done, but I'm amazed by how much stuff doesn't get done, because I wish the process, Harry Reid, who was the Senate majority leader at the time, had said, Democrat, and he said, look, you'll never lose an election because of process. And I think that is so fundamentally wrong. It kind of gets into the weeds, but if you have a bad process, then you get a bad result. The 1972 Budget Act, only one time in the history of our nation since then, has the process actually worked the way it's laid out in the law? And that is, you go through the process of this appropriation. Instead, what happens is you get an omnibus, you get a continuing resolution, you get like one vote on trillions of dollars. Like, it's yay or nay.
Yeah.
Like, wait a second. How come we're not voting on each and individual issue and each thing? And then we can really find out where the nation, how come we aren't doing a zero-based budget? How come 75% of the budget is mandatory programmatic spending? It happens whether or not members of Congress vote on it. Like, I was really eye-opening. And the part I gravitated to was oversight. I had these pillars that I came up with before I was in Congress: fiscal discipline, limited government, accountability, and a strong national defense. When I got there, I realized that one of those was really weak compared to the other three, and that was the accountability. That's why I gravitated to this oversight committee and did well there, because I became the chairman after only 3 terms, and I think it was only the 5th time in 100 years that had ever happened. So I got some good mentoring there, some good advice, and focused on that component of it. But I also thought the other big disappointment is I thought that the national media, the traditional media, would give you more of a fair shake. I left with a very bitter, sour taste in my mouth that they have political agendas. And I grew up thinking that the NBCs and CBS and ABCs of the world and all these outlets like the New York Times and Washington Post, that they would write it as it is. That's not the case.
Yeah.
I mean, I could sit here. We don't have enough. There's not enough space on the internet to explain to you how much, how political they can be.
Yeah.
And how they have goals and objectives. And if you don't fit their narrative, and as a Republican calling out Barack Obama's administration, I didn't fit their narrative.
Yeah.
So I did not. I did every show that I was asked to do, and probably turned down more than half of the requests that I got. But I was shocked at how little they would actually fairly write something. I didn't want them to write it just from my vantage point, but to have none of my vantage point in there. And I'm the chairman of the Oversight Committee. Come on.
Yeah.
It was really bad. That was very disheartening.
So like when you were the chairman, I would assume that would probably get most people to pick up a call from you. I mean, you're kind of sitting in a pretty important position, right? So if you either needed to talk to someone, wanted some advice, I would assume there was probably some pretty cool conversations that you got to have because of that.
When I first got to Congress, they do these orientations, and one of the more senior members of Congress there said, "Hey, look, when you get here, you get a really cool business card. Use it, because most people, if you call them, they'll answer the phone, and that hasn't been that way in your life in the past." And it's very true.
Yeah.
When you're chairman of the oversight, it's one of two things. They're either yes sir, no sir, or that person doesn't live here. Either they're running for the hills, right? Yeah. So, one of the things I had is very unique in all the country is I had unilateral subpoena authority. There aren't anybody else in the world that can, in the country, that can just write a subpoena and submit it, and it is a subpoena. Most have to go through a process and get a judge to sign it and do. Not me. And so I felt a huge responsibility, and I think we found the right balance by not overusing it. But again, one of my biggest disappointments was the enforcement of that. That subpoena is only as good as it can be enforced. And the House of Representatives is very weak as its supposed third branch of government, its own branch of government. They never enforced their own. There's a deep, rich history I could get into here, because the committee was formed in 1814, and they went through some of these gyrations about enforcing subpoenas, some of which involve some very Francis Scott Key and Sam Houston, some really interesting people in our nation's history. But it was actually, I believe it was Judge Gorsuch, is a Supreme Court justice. I think it was his mother that worked for the Reagan administration that actually turned the tide against Congress issuing its own subpoenas. And she thumbed a nose at it, and Congress didn't stand up for itself. I think she was Secretary of Education. I got to check. I'm probably wrong on that. But enforcement of those subpoenas, I don't think they're optional. I really don't.
Yeah.
And but you get into this legal entanglement, and people pretty much thumb their nose at it, and that's bad for the nation, I think.
Yeah.
So by enforcement of subpoenas, you mean that they don't have to show up?
Well, we had a person by the name of Brian Pagliano who was the IT specialist working for Hillary Clinton. So we were doing the whole Clinton email scandal, right?
Right.
This is a guy who worked for the State Department and for 4 years as the IT specialist on what's called the 7th floor, which is the top floor. And he signed an immunity agreement. The Department of Justice granted him immunity. So I decided that I wanted to talk to him. He has immunity. He has nothing at risk, but I wanted to figure out what was going on there with the Clinton email thing, because they set up their own convenient,
Right.
email server and system. Department of Justice said there was nothing nefarious there. Well, it just so happens that Hillary Clinton set up this email server the same day that she started her Senate confirmation, but James Comey insisted that, that was just a coincidence. It was just a coincidence. So I wanted to talk to this Brian Pagliano. He has immunity. He was the IT specialist, and I sent over a document request to the State Department. I wanted to see Pagliano's, all of his emails. They're government emails, and I had a right to see them. Finally, after months, they came back and they said, he never sent, nor did he ever receive an email. You work in IT? You don't even have an email account? You guys are lying to me. You lying sack of... they were just lying to me. So anyway, I called him to come before the committee. He refused. I issued a subpoena. He didn't show up. I issued another subpoena. I had the U.S. Marshals serve him the subpoena. He didn't show up. So we held him in contempt and didn't go anywhere. Just would not enforce it. Part of that was the Republican leadership's fault. But that kind of thing, I think, it's wrong for the nation. His attorney said, he's going to plead the Fifth. And I said, well, then he can come to my committee and stand there and plead the Fifth. That's fine. But people often change their minds once they're there.
For sure. And
so you can't just mail that in. Imagine our justice system in this country if everybody could just say, nah, I don't want to do that. That's going to be inconvenient for me.
That's a hard pass for me, thanks.
Yeah. I'm kind of busy. No, that doesn't work that way. But that's the way it worked there, and the reporting on it was little to none. It just drove me nuts.
Wow. Was there ever a moment, whether it was early on or later in your career, where not a pinch me moment, because that's the wrong way to say it, but it was like, I can't believe I'm having this conversation. I can't believe I'm talking to this person right now.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of those. How in the world did I get here? I was the first member of Congress to go into Libya after the Benghazi attack. And they talked to people who were there on the ground and tears in their eyes and missing their loved ones. I think that I've talked about this with Trey Gowdy and some others along the way. I think one of the toughest things you do as a member of Congress is also the best thing you get to do as a member of Congress. I had 5 young men serving in the United States military that died while I was their congressman. They were from Utah's 3rd Congressional District. They died in the line of duty. And to talk to the parents and to speak at their funerals, that's tough. And, most of them are, I think one was in his 30s, a couple were in their 20s. That was some of the most difficult thing. I did some crazy stuff, hiding behind dumpsters to meet people to try to convince them to give me, entrust me with documents and things like that.
Wow.
Just crazy stuff. I remember flying to a city and then being told to, call this telephone number and now start driving on, and then we'll flash our lights and let you know. I mean, we were doing right out of the movie type of stuff that was just kind of crazy and fun. And then just the people that you get to meet who are just really, they need help. a very satisfying. A lot of immigration cases, a lot of Social Security cases, a lot of military cases that very satisfying when you actually help solve them. And then, you find yourself questioning people. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs, I remember being in a classified meeting with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and I am like really laying into him. I mean, I am like beyond being polite here. I was so frustrated with him. And I thought, this is exactly what makes America great. I'm just a representative from Utah. And that's the way our system's supposed to work, right? That doesn't happen in other countries. You don't get to kind of yell at the senior most military person. But in the United States, you can, and you do.
Yeah.
And we had a really good discussion. It was tough. And I told him, I said, you know what bothers me? I said, I know more about this than you do. And you're the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. And I'm just a Republican member of the House. And how come I know more about it than you do? I was really frustrated with him. This is about Benghazi. And those types of things, I think, were, I still think back and think, wow, that was crazy.
Jeez.
Oh,
that'd be terrifying. In other countries, your house gets blown up.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
For real.
That's exactly right.
It's true.
I mean, that is cool because it's hard not to be cynical about government, from this side of the table. Because, you just feel like, I hate that Oversight Committee story. Like, I hate that you put a subpoena out there and somebody can just not show up.
Yeah, it's so wrong.
Is it because of his connection with the Clintons, or can anybody just not show up?
Well, I think in part it was because he knew that the media was not going to continue to run the story.
Good point.
There wasn't going to be any ramification.
Right.
And it's sort of this circle that's wrong. And that is the Department of Justice isn't going to do something unless it's the hot fire of the day, right? If it's not showing up on the front page of the Post, they run to the sound of the sirens, right?
Yeah,
and
the accountability sirens.
They don't want to be
media.
embarrassed. They don't want to be embarrassed. And so if you can't use that, expose it, and they aren't going to write about it, then they're probably not going to solve it either. It's just, it's just a protect your own backside type of, there are 110, think about that, there are 110,000 people at the Department of Justice. I had about 40 employees. So, it's kind of us against the world there.
Right.
And that was there's 2.2 million federal workers at the time, a 3-point-something trillion dollar budget. And so rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse, it's everywhere.
Right. Wow. God, that would be hard.
It would be hard.
I mean, media is almost the fourth branch of government, if you think about it. I mean...
That was fun. You get out there, you get to be on, Meet the Press and that kind of stuff. And those are kind of pinch me moments like, what am I doing? I remember growing up watching that stuff and now you're there. But I loved it. It was fun. It was fun. It was an honor to serve.
What was Trump like? As a person? You know what? I really, as a person, he and I get along fabulously. Now, I don't want to create the wrong impression. It's not like he calls me all the time, but he calls from time to time. What was that like the first time, like getting that would just be so wild. Like, it's Trump. Hold on.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Hold on. Yeah.
Well,
Hold on,
the first, I wasn't the first. I don't know. His assistant, his secretary called, and I could tell it was the White House number. And I was just getting on a plane, and I told her, she said, the president would like to speak with you. And I said, I just can't do it right now. I said, I'm sitting on an airplane. There's no way I can have this conversation. She said, no, he really wants to talk to you right now. I said, I can't hold up the plane. I'll call you when I land. So as soon as I land, my phone's got all these, he wants to talk to you right now. And so I get off and was traveling with my wife, and I get over by the kind of quiet place by the baggage claim, and we just have this conversation. There was nothing that urgent. He just, when he wants to talk, he just wants to talk, He really, I really like him on a personal level. If everybody kind of saw and got to know him a little bit, he can be so personable. I remember I did get to go in the Oval Office. This is kind of a funny story. And it was when I was, anyway, I go into the Oval Office, and I have my wife with me, and he says, he stands up from behind the desk, and he said, you're doing pretty good with Fox. You're doing pretty good. And he said, when you first started, I don't know. I wasn't too sure. He said, not everybody can do television. He said, now look, you can do television. I can do television. Not everybody can do television. When you started, not so much. But now you're pretty good. You're pretty good. And I thought it was just so funny the way he just tells you exactly what he's thinking.
That's so funny.
Yeah. And so again, I don't want to create the wrong impression. He doesn't call all the time, but he does call from time to time. And he always says, how's Bear's ears? Every single time I've ever talked to him, he's always likes to bring up Bear's ears. How's the Bear's ears? Well, thank you, Mr. President. Appreciate what you did on Bear's ears, and it's going great. It's great. And I remember before the end of the election, he just called. It was maybe 45 days out. He said, how are we doing in Utah? I said, Mr. President, you're doing fine. He said, do I need to come visit? And I said, no, I don't think so. You're going to win. He said, are you sure? And I said, yeah, I'm sure. I said, look, I'll tell you if I thought you needed to be here, if I thought it was in play, but you're going to win. You're going to win Utah in a big way. He said, you're sure? And I said, yeah, I'm sure. And he said, if I need to come, you tell me and I'll be there. And I said, no, you don't need to be there. Go fight in these other states where you need to be. And then after you win again, come on back to Utah. We'd love to have you here anytime. But these last 45 days, you don't need to do that. And he said, okay, just checking.
Wow.
That's kind of the way he rolled. Yeah.
Were you scared that he wouldn't win Utah?
Yeah.
And then you're going to get, what's the phone call you get after that?
Well, I thought if he doesn't win Utah, he's not coming back anyway.
Yeah. But.
No, he's been, and I've talked to him, since he lost. I continue to chat with him from time to time, and he does some things to help some people. When I don't know, maybe I'm not supposed to say this, but I kind of played a role in helping him call, when we had some people that died in Afghanistan, and one of them was from Utah. And I kind of helped set that up so that the family could talk to President Trump. And they really wanted to talk to him. And after the call, not only did I get a call from the family saying, hey, thanks for helping that, but then I got a call from Donald Trump, and he said, I want you to know I called and I talked to him.
Wow.
He's just he can be very, very compassionate like that, which a lot of people don't see. But he spent a good, 30 plus minutes talking to this family, and he didn't have to do that. He's the former president. And, he didn't go out and tout that. It wasn't all over the news. It wasn't like he was trying to grandstand. He was doing it because he was doing the right thing. Right. And then he called and wanted to tell me about it. And then he told me a little bit about it. And anyway, so he does things like that are behind the scenes. The guy works so hard. He really, it's unbelievable. He'll call at like unbelievable hours in the night. He's just... I think he realizes that Utah's 2 hours behind. And
yeah. He's always got
Mike Lee's.
He'll be up at midnight.
Mike Lee's got a lot of stories like that too. So, yeah.
Was this with the group when everybody was pulling out? Is that?
Yeah, the 13 that were killed. One of them was from Utah. Yeah.
That's another one we're going to be hearing about for a long time, I think.
Yeah, they're not all out. There's still people there. So,
yeah. Wow.
Do you feel like sometimes government officials have to be a certain way publicly, but then they're differently privately? Not that they're not true to who they are, but do you feel like it's required?
But there's a bunch that aren't true to who they are.
Yeah, there's some. Look, I think authenticity wins the day.
Yeah.
I think voters figure out who's being true and honest, and I've just tried to be as open and transparent. And I think what cracks me up is when you have members of Congress, House or Senate, and they have spokesmen.
Yeah.
You didn't hire me to be your representatives to have some spokesperson. What the crap is that? I'll be my own spokesperson. Thank you very much. I represent 800,000 people. I don't need to have it filtered by some person who's, in their 20s and really doesn't understand it. You want to talk to the person who was in the room, and so it still bothers me to this day. Now, I understand at the presidential level, I understand at the cabinet secretary level, the velocity and the volume of things that are coming at them. They can't possibly do that. But I really like Donald Trump in that, you can complain about Donald Trump, but he was as open and transparent as anybody. He answered questions every day in front of the media. And I think that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
And I did that, in my own, but it goes back to this bigger point is I think some people just hide and they don't answer those questions and they try to portray themselves as they think they're supposed to be, as opposed to just, I did this, or no, I didn't do that. And this is why.
Yeah.
It's like when I was first elected, hadn't been sworn in yet. I got a call from Stephen Colbert to be on the Colbert Report, when he had the cable show.
Yeah.
I'm like, sure. And they're like, really? And I like, people don't do my show, right? And there's a reason why. And I'm like, I don't care. I'll do whatever you want. And so then they checked in right before, and are you really showing up? I'm like, yeah, I'm showing up. And I did it. And I had a great discussion with him. And he was great. I really, I did this leg wrestling thing with him. I wasn't planning on doing that. And I lost. And he's like, you were a kicker on the BYU football team and your legs are like weak as can be. And I'm like, sorry, like it's been a few years. And, and it was so funny because I did that and got all this attention and stuff. And about, 8-9 months later, I walk into this room and it's a big room and there were a bunch of people in there and Colbert was already in the room. He was like on the other side of the room. And somehow we kind of locked eyes right when I walked in the room, and without missing a beat, he cupped his hands around his mouth, and he yells out as loud as he can, "Hey, spaghetti legs! Come over here!"
That's funny.
See, I think that stuff is just, it's real. It was happening, but I think people become quote unquote politicians when they just sort of fake their way through it and they try to create a facade. But you know who those people are. You see them, you think, that's.
Yeah. How'd the Fox News thing happen? Like, was that always the plan, was to get out and transition to Fox?
No. It's interesting because I think back, I probably, and somebody have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I probably did more MSNBC, NBC, and CNN than I did Fox.
Yeah.
It's just, particularly here in Utah, more people watch Fox and they just don't watch as much of the other stuff. They didn't see all the times I was doing all the other stuff. But look, I got my degree in communications. I actually, that's what John Huntsman hired me for. And I thought I was actually pretty good at it. It comes easy and natural to me. When I decided to leave, when I had made the decision, all right, this is what we're going to do, I had to go figure out what the next job's going to be.
Yeah.
Right. And so I went and I spoke with MSNBC, although just lightly, CNN and Fox News. And, I got 2 offers and, different deal structures and whatnot, but to be a contributor, I accepted the one from Fox News. And it's worked out great.
Yeah.
I signed a 1-year deal and then I signed a 2-year deal and then
We're still here.
in the middle of another 2-year deal. So things are going well. It's a good balance.
Okay.
It's a good balance for me.
And
you know what? What's interesting? When I knew Roger Ailes before, but that's not who signed the deal with me at Fox, because he was kind of just going out as I was finishing my time in Congress. I sat down with the president of Fox after having signed the deal, and it was kind of about like day one, and I said, so I showed up in New York and I said, look, I don't know what I don't know. So tell me what I need to know and what you need from me. Because the contract's very light. It's just basically a contributor, but I wanted to put a little more meat on the bones by figuring it out. And I said, what do you need me to do? And he said, well, first thing is you got to learn to say no. And I'm like, what? And he said, the other thing is you can say or do anything you want. You don't feel like you have to agree with the president or disagree with the president. Don't feel like you have to say yes or no. Just, we're hiring you to give us your opinion. You have a unique perspective. You've had a unique set of experiences nobody else has had. Just tell us what you think. Tell us based on your experience what you're seeing. You don't have to, and by no, he meant you got to say no if you don't want to, we're going to ask you to do too many shows. So you got to learn to say no, which I thought was interesting. And then he's just said, just you be you. If you say something that you believe in, it's authenticity that we sell here. So just be candid.
Yeah.
And
that's all the direction they've ever given me.
And they stick with that. They don't ever give you crap for saying this or that.
No.
Interesting.
No.
I think we all have such a different view of the media. Just like there is a narrative.
They'll kind of say, hey, generally we're going to talk about this today. So, if you want to do some research, but they don't tell me and I could tell you 40% of the time we end up speaking about what they say they're going to talk to. The other 60% of the time we're off on something else.
Wow.
So much of it is spontaneous. Hey, Congressman, even though I'm former, Congressman Joe Biden just said this. What do you think? And you have 3 seconds to process it and spit something out.
So, you've got to stay pretty involved. You got to keep up with everything.
That's, but that's what I've been doing for the last 15 years, right? Is as long as I keep up on the news every day, we're good.
Well, and how often has it helped you to have the contacts that you have from, your previous career?
So if I know something's going on, I will call.
Right.
There are a lot of senators and House members that are still there that I call, say, hey, help me understand this. What did you mean by that? Or where is this going? And there's former staff members. There's the other people like that I got a pretty good network of people.
I was going to say,
and I'll shoot them a text.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that I can call and get a perspective.
That's got to be super helpful.
It is.
It's funny talking to you. I'm just like, are you ready to get back in there, please?
Yeah.
Come on. You empty nester now, right?
Well, I don't have my helmet on, so. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe at some point. Right now, I love the balance of what we're doing, but yeah, maybe. I don't want to take that off the table, so maybe.
That's cool to hear, because if people want to watch entertaining politics, just YouTube Jason Chaffetz. Because you were never afraid to just be tough.
You get 5 minutes, you better get after real quick.
Right.
Yeah.
And you dealt with some stuff.
Yeah.
Right? While you were there.
Yes. The people that, I don't know, or, I don't have this information. The more I was there, the more I'm like, I am not putting up with this. I learned a little trick near the end. I wish I had learned earlier, which is send them a letter in advance. So they have no excuse.
Oh, wow.
They have no excuse. I did that with the Attorney General. And he said, I don't know. I'll ask him a tough question. He said, I don't know. I'll have to look into that. And I said, that's why I sent you a letter in advance of this, so you'd have that information. Did you get my letter?
Man.
And then did you get my letter? How are they going to answer that? Think about it. They got to scramble, right?
Right.
No, I didn't get your letter. Why didn't you? Wait, you didn't? I'm the chairman of the committee. I sent you a letter. You didn't get it? Who is your legislative liaison? What did they do with, if they say yes, they say, well, why aren't you prepared?
Oh man, that is brilliant.
It turned out to be really good. And the other thing that I like to ask people that they always screw up, who do you work for? You get a bureaucrat in front of, I work for Tom, Johnson or whatever. Like, no, you don't. You want to try that again? Who you work for? You work for the American people.
That's right.
And so this is the people's house.
Yeah.
I'm a representative of the people of the United States of America. So if you work for the people and I'm their representative, in fact, I'm the chairman of their committee, then don't you feel an obligation to answer my question? Just stuff like that. It's so fun.
Just made me think of Miracle, like my favorite hockey movie ever. Who do you play for? University of Minnesota. Another lap.
Yep.
Keep going.
Exactly. It's exactly right.
It is. It's like, who do you play for? USA. Like, all right, go get showered.
Yeah.
You're free. So do you look back on anything that you wish had gone differently? Is there anything in your time as a congressman that you wish had gone differently, or regret, or something that you wish you would have thought of doing or wanted to change while you were there? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
Something like that.
look, you kind of silly if you think you did everything exactly right, but I have confidence that I did, based on the information that I had at the time.
For sure.
I was doing everything that I could possibly do to make the right decision. I have no regrets in that regard. Learning the information that I have now, boy, there's some people that I'd love to re-question and bring up, and but
Who?
But at the same time, I think we really did make a difference, and you represent a district, so you got to do a lot of stuff and for the district, and that I was happy about as well. I don't really have any regrets that way, but boy, you just become that much smarter, and you
Sure.
know so much more of how things actually get done.
Right.
And the sausage making in Congress it's pretty gross. So yeah, you got to get in the mire, but you can also make a good positive, have a really positive effect. And
Right.
There's some really good people that are still there that I'm just thrilled that are still there. I'm like, hey, like James Langford, the senator from Oklahoma. I'm like, I'm glad you're still there.
Yeah.
He and I sat shoulder to shoulder on the committee, and Tim Scott is another one, the senator of South Carolina,
Yeah.
I talk to pretty frequently, and he's doing amazing things. That guy could very possibly be a president, and glad he knows where Alpine, Utah is.
So I have two questions. One was insight from Clint. He's like, make sure you ask him this. He said there's some kind of lapel or pin that's like the key to the city. Like it gets you in anywhere. He's like, make sure you ask him about that.
Okay, so members of Congress get an identifying pin that you wear on your lapel, and it allows you access with the Capitol Hill Police. We kind of joke that, yeah, that's also the target to say, hey, there's a member of Congress. If you're a visitor and you kind of figure out what the pin looks like, then you can tell who's in Congress and who's not. But it's really there for the Capitol Hill Police.
Okay.
Capitol Hill Police are mostly in uniform, but there are a lot of them that are not in uniform, and a lot of undercover stuff, video stuff going on, and they need to be able to identify good guys and bad guys.
Okay.
And but it also works kind of throughout the city, because the Secret Service understands this. The other law enforcement agencies understand that, and it is sort of a way to get around the city and deal with. There's 17 different law enforcement agencies, as best I recall, and so
17.
Yeah, when you start thinking through all the
Whoa.
different things in DC,
Yeah.
and so it just helps to have on the pin, and they really want you to be wearing the pin
Yeah.
so that they can figure, because they don't have all 535 members of the House and Senate. The Senate pins are different than the House pins, but you still see people wearing those pins. So even up until about the president or vice president, cabinet members have pins. Are they all?
Interesting.
Yeah. You don't want some rookie, Secret Service agent to, who's that? It's just an identifying pin.
Okay.
And you get in a lot of trouble if you lose it. So
Yeah. Imagine someone else just putting that sucker on, right?
What's to stop somebody from just making one themselves?
I would think there would be a good big consequence. They're very difficult to make, and they have some special stuff in them that would
Oh man, now
be
I'm
very
really
difficult
curious.
for them to do. Yeah.
I'm really curious now what these things look like. What's your second question?
So my second question is more just in general. I feel like, and I'll speak from my standpoint, that I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong, the younger generation isn't as involved. Like I know that's been like a big thing. I get the younger generation to get out and vote, right? Like,
Right.
Why do you think it's such an issue? I mean, and I can speak to myself personally. Like, I vote very rarely, right? And so, like why? Like how? Like is that a conscious effort? Like how do we help get people excited about the process. Because I mean, when you talk about it, you are like so passionate about it, and it makes you want to be involved. Like I remember when Governor Cox came on, he talked about it. It's like, oh, I get that, you know, but like unless I'm talking to someone, I don't feel that same way.
Right.
And so like, how do you help someone feel like they're actually it's worthwhile to get involved?
Well, look, we want and need as many people to get involved, but it's also part of being a citizen in the United States of America that you can choose not to get involved, and that's okay too. But I think the way we communicate has just so dramatically changed. You know, it used to be the 3 television stations and Walter Cronkite, you know, and the newspapers were a big deal. But now that has morphed so much that people are seeking the content they want to see. And you have this filtering from these social media companies that I think is very, very destructive to the process. I can tell you, I've been on the receiving end of that from both Facebook, Twitter, and somewhat Instagram, which is obviously owned by Meta or Facebook, right? So that's a dangerous thing. And that's a part why I really like Fox, because I think they genuinely try to give both sides of the story, and that they give avenues to Democrats to make their case. But how that filtering happens and how people do or do not get that information, it does scare me a little bit.
Yeah.
Personally, most people are surprised by this. I don't like the whole early voting thing. I think everybody should vote with the same information at the same time. If I could wave my magic wand, we would have sort of a 3-day window, maybe a Thursday, Friday, Saturday to vote, and be able to authenticate the vote. And I think if you do that, you would have more confidence in the system, but you'd also be dealing with the same information.
Yeah.
And like, for instance, the Youngkin race, which is the gubernatorial race in Virginia, Terry McAuliffe made a comment that really swayed the race, where he talked about no parents should have no say in the curriculum that is developed for their students. Well, that debate where that was drawn out happened after early voting started.
Wow.
And so I just think we're starting elections way too early. And I just think they should pause as a nation, and somehow between that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, you should be able to figure out when you can get there and vote. And, you know, there's going to be some instances you have shut-ins, you have people with physical disabilities, and you have people who are maybe traveling for legitimate reasons. Yeah, of course, there needs to be an avenue for them, but I don't like the whole vote by mail. I don't think that's the way to do it in mass. I think it's dangerous. But it also creates a little bit of a laziness where you don't really need to think about it.
Yeah.
Or somebody else will think it through for you. And those are my concerns with it. Part of it is tradition. You know, I remember my mom and dad, they would drag me to the voting booth, and I'd go and stand in line. And I thought it was really cool. They had a little curtain thing, and you poke the place. You know,
the hanging chad.
The hanging chads, yeah. I thought that was pretty cool. And I think that's, you know, partly the upbringing.
Yeah.
Right now, if it's just a piece of mail, I don't know that you build that same sort of tradition. So I got a lot of reasons for it. But I also want people to vote who are informed and that are paying attention.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's a little too lazy to just say, oh, I'm going to vote for a Republican because I'm a Republican. Like, really? That works, I guess, if I'm a Republican, but I don't want people doing that on the other side of the aisle. Like, what are we doing? Why are we? Just think it through a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, at the end of the day, it's usually a race between two people. And so, you know, put on your big boy pants, think about it, pray about it, do whatever you need to do, but get informed and make some decisions. But let's also make sure that you get the right information. And
do you ever see any like substantial change happening, like whether it's to the parties, the voting system, like do you see anything like substantially changing with the government as we see it today, or the process, or the parties, or, you know, anything like that?
Well, there are always constitutional challenges, and I you know, we got to make sure that we adhere to that. I don't believe that the Constitution is a living, breathing document that just changes at the whim of, you know, the politics of the moment. how we vote and do those types of things, Democrats are desperately trying to change the way we do that. And so there are lots of things that I worry about that I could continue to get in depth into, but yeah, look, America figures these things out. We're still the greatest country on the face of the planet. I think the American people recognize when we're off track, and they usually right or wrong and get it going back in the direction that they want.
Yeah.
But we're a growing nation. We're huge. With 330 plus million people. Yikes. That's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people.
And look, I think fundamental to good government is the federal government should not have its tentacles in everything. Try to find something in your life that the federal government doesn't have something. And by the way, everything doesn't need to be political, Sports
Yes, it does.
and musical and music and, music. It just...
Everything is political, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and I think
hate
it's
it.
exhausting.
Yeah.
There's a proper role of government. It's a limited one. Most of those things should be left to the people themselves or to the states. Let the federal government run the post office. Let them do the military. Let them do, there's certain things we need to do. But right now, the federal government is everywhere. There shouldn't even be a Department of Education, in my opinion, at the federal level. Right. Let the states run that with the school boards and the school districts. And we don't need a federal Department of Education.
It's so true. Because it is. There's so much difference between states.
Yeah.
And you should have say on which, right.
It's a good thing.
It is a very good thing. And it should be up to the state on, what kind of curriculum
things like
they
that.
want to do.
Just let the money flow to the kids. You'd save nearly $100 billion just on that one move.
Wow.
Or that money would flow to the kids and there'd be that much money going into education that instead has to be filtered.
Right. So if there was one thing you could change in government, in federal government, or let's just say in the House of Representatives, one rule that you could change or one policy.
The 10th Amendment to the Constitution is just that the limitations on what the federal government is doing is just not fully appreciated. It's not fully instituted, and it would help starve the beast. It's hard for me to narrow it to just one.
Sure.
But we just can't be all things to all people. Flow this back to the states. Let them make these types of decisions. The other thing I think would be key is I'd love to see a balanced budget amendment. I don't think we'll ever get our financial house in order until the states step up and make that decision. Do we want our feds to live within their means or not? Because right now it's so out of control. So out of control.
Wow. So speaking of states, how do you feel like we're doing here?
Utah's great. I get to speak on the national stage regularly, and I'm always bragging about Utah. We're a better run state. We're fiscally responsible. I think we found the right balance. We have communities that come together. We have a large gay population here, but we got a very religious population here. We get along.
Yeah.
There isn't the contention that you feel in those other states. We're also more diverse than I think most people realize. We have a large Pacific Islander population. We got people who served missions all around the world. I think so our language skills are amazing, and that helps with this cohesiveness.
Yeah, no one ever talks about that. That's a big deal.
Yeah, it is.
It's a lot of understanding. People that speak two languages here.
Yeah.
Well, and that have experienced different cultures because of that, right?
Yeah. And so there's a lot more, I don't want to call it tolerance, but there's a lot more deep understanding. Our son served a mission in Ghana. He loves Ghana. Right. He loves Africa, and he has a deep understanding of it that maybe you don't find in other communities. I just hope we don't become Los Angeles or California. Ugh. And I worry that we're always...
Like Heber?
Yeah. We're always about growth. Let's grow. I don't know that I'm all, let's grow.
Down.
Yeah.
It really, really does.
Take our time, keep that quality of life, and make sure that we got the water and resources.
See, that's just it. That's the thing that bothers me so much is we grow. It's just cart before the horse. Like it's
the roads.
That's the number one thing for me. Like just since I started Bam Bam, it's like I live in Highland, and it's amazing how much my drive changes every year.
Yeah.
Just because a new subdivision goes in, but the roads don't widen.
Yeah.
You know, the schools aren't ready for it. And it's so true. I mean, look at Lehigh with water. Like every year they've got to shut sprinklers off even earlier because they don't have water.
Yeah.
It's just,
We're the
it's
second
crazy.
driest state in the nation.
Yeah.
So let's act like it, you know?
Really.
Yeah.
But then the political part of it's really interesting too. Like my mom lives in Star Valley, Wyoming, and and then I grew up in Heber, and you go to Heber, it doesn't feel like Heber anymore. And you say like, let's not turn into California. You know, Star Valley, during COVID, all of the property up there, which you could go up there and buy 50 acres for, less than $100,000. And they came in and bought all of it. And they're already starting to feel they all came and bought property to get away from the lockdowns in California and New York. But they're still bringing the politics with them.
Yeah.
Which is so interesting to me. So yeah, we got to be careful of that stuff because I mean the growth.
That's what I worry about.
The growth can bite you in the butt. That's for sure.
Yeah, we love living here though, but
it's a special place.
Yeah.
But it can be ruined pretty easily if we're not careful, just like anything can. So.
Well, this was fascinating. Thank you so much. This was such a fun convo.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in. This was awesome.
Yeah, you have my vote. I'm ready. All right. I'm ready when you're ready.
Well,
I'll donate some meals to some. I'll have Drew come and stand by the cheese table
when I'm doing the fundraiser.
Shake some hands. Yeah, we'll get Taysom. That'll be the.
Even better. That'd be great.
Right.
Yeah,
that'll be the replacement. But yeah, no. Thanks for coming. This is very cool.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.